You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you a little bit about our current sponsors, the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. As you well know, if you've been following This is Oklahoma, they've been a huge part of this podcast. So this podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma's story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode on the patio outside at Jones Assembly right now, whatever that noise was. Somebody driving around in a Mustang or something. But yeah, we're out on the patio, beautiful day, beautiful fall day in Oklahoma with very little wind. But my guest today is the one and only Mr. Graham Colton. Appreciate your time, mate. Really looking forward to diving into it.
Glad to be here. We've already, I think we already know a little bit about each other's past, so
definitely
anxious to dig in a little more.
And I think we know a lot of the same people too, right? We know probably too much about a lot of the same people.
That's right.
But yeah, like I said, we're outside on the patio at Jones. Like I just said to you, man, it's weird being in this place when it's closed, right? When you know it's eerie, like you said.
It is eerie.
It used to be in here, there's energy, there's drinks flowing, it's such a good time. And then my biggest thing is every time I come here I'm getting that bread with the pit cheese and I'm just like pimento. Like, it's so good. But obviously, big news recently, you're coming back, I guess stepping back on stage, which is huge news, and there's a lot of happy people to hear that. But before we dive into that stuff, let's go all the way back. You're born and raised here, you played at Heritage Hall. A lot of people might not know that you're a QB, right? And you set some records, or broke some records.
Ask my mom; she's got all the stats.
Yeah, but I guess just go all the way back. What's it like growing up in Oklahoma City and kind of Heritage Hall area?
Yeah, growing up here was amazing, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was had a really active, supportive family.
Yeah,
feel like it was. Flew by, and I say that just because it was like perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember having anything other than just great experiences that are kind of, middle of America,
right?
Just like what you think it would be.
Yeah.
For somebody, you're from out of the country, so just what you think, sort of. I want to say small town USA. It's not small town USA, but it felt like that.
Yeah.
And I find myself even like with writing songs and just inspiration in all areas that I kind of draw from. It is from where I grew up and the people that I met and still find myself being close to.
Yeah.
A big part of who I am is absolutely this community, how it's grown. The people that are still in my lives, and of course my family.
Yeah. So growing up then, athletics was quite a big draw for you and family and stuff like that?
It was. Had a pretty normal, felt like normal athletic kind of thing, in Oklahoma. It's soccer was a big deal. Didn't start playing football until middle school, and actually was not very good, pretty bad at it.
Yeah.
And we kind of had like a ragtag middle school team when I started playing football. And for my school team at Heritage Hall, I was not very good, wasn't big, wasn't fast, wanted to play quarterback, but it just didn't really click, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though I thought I was pretty good at it. And then, as the big kids aren't as big when you grow up a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure that happens in every sport. You catch up to the guys that are bigger and stronger and faster, and all of a sudden you kind of find your way. But like everything in life, especially with me, there was just a lot of happenstance kind of moments that put me at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Being a freshman in high school and right next to my best friend at that, Wes Welker.
Yeah.
Where we were both playing as freshmen and getting our asses kicked.
Yeah.
But it definitely kind of paved the way for a pretty magical high school experience.
Right. Yeah. Because if I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of Chargers listening to this, that you guys were that team was the first one to win a state championship, right?
It was the first team to really, with respect to the other great teams that we grew up watching, it was the first team that really did, I want to choose my words carefully here, to all the big brothers that we grew up watching.
Yeah.
The first team that I feel like ever, did something that was truly unexpected.
Yeah.
And I don't mean just getting into the playoffs but it was, here's this little private school.
Right.
That was nobody expected anything from. I don't even think the coaches or the administration or the school itself expected anything from. You maybe could get to the playoffs.
Right.
But there wasn't a culture, especially the way it is now at that school, that was built on being successproduceful and winning.
And now it's, I mean, you mentioned Heritage Hall Chargers, like it's a force to be reckoned with now.
It's
right?
it's like a nationally known program that culturally it's just an entirely different thing. That kind of like the school, my kids, or I have one there now in third grade, and you feel it even. I'm not saying it was just because of the football team, but there, a lot of different things kind of happened around the same time that propelled that school into kind of what it is today.
Well, and it's not just through football, right? You see success in one area, and then that breeds the culture, so that goes through.
I think so.
Cheerleading, soccer, tennis, golf, whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's cool to kind of have that, to look back and see, like, over history. At the time you thought, wow, we just won something, but you never think of the impact, right?
I think so too. And the cool thing is, I'm sure we'll bounce around about this, but the guys that were on the team that won the first state championship, I mean, it wasn't a coincidence that these guys are all super successful in their lives now. Doctors and military service and people that are truly talented and gifted individuals in their respective fields after sports.
Yeah.
And that's no coincidence. I mean, you get those kinds of people and good, together, and good things are going to happen for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you mentioned Wes, like, when you look back, it's you and Wes, like, like he's a receiver and you're throwing the ball to him.
He was everything, by the way. He wasn't just a receiver. He was. I feel like not a week goes by where I'm not just sort of talking about Wes and those stories, because it was. I mean, it's like a movie. Listening to, even listening to other people talk about their experiences watching him.
Right.
But we all knew it. We knew it. Yeah. We knew something beyond special was happening, not only with him, but just the team sort of feeding into that energy that he was building around us. It was pretty cool.
So what you mentioned, though, it's really cool to, like, you see, there's a lot of people out there that just have those high school memories, right? And that was the best time of their lives, and they always tell you about it. But like you just mentioned, like, everyone else went on to be successful. There's so many other places where you all went, and doctors and military service, and you and West, whatever it is. Like, there's so many cool things there, and like you meant, it breeds success, right? And it doesn't just go like. It wasn't just at that time. Like, it's like, okay, this is the catalyst. Now let's go on and, like, kick ass in life as well.
Yeah.
Which is, sometimes, there's plenty of people out there who haven't done that, right? And, fair enough, whatever. But like, that's really cool to have, to still be friends, to have that community here and talk about that stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a bike race going on around town right now. So obviously high school, you have a great time. You're playing football. I mean, music came late to you, right? Later than some.
So music was always a part of my thing. It was always around the house.
Okay.
My dad still plays in the same band that he played in college.
Yeah, I had word from a mutual friend of ours that your dad is very, very talented.
He is. He's a very talented person. Somebody I still draw a lot of inspiration from. So music was always a part of my life, whether I kind of knew it or not. And I always say it with music. I understood it, not from a place of being like gifted or anything, but I could hear music and I knew what was happening. I knew how songs and melodies and lyrics all went together. But when I started playing guitar in middle school, and then in high school, since sports kind of dominated my time, music just became an outlet to just, sort of sit in my bedroom and listen to music. And I remember when being maybe a freshman or sophomore in college, in high school, sorry, and I would hear these contemporary songs that would come on the radio or MTV at that time, and it was really then when I started to be like, okay, this reminds me of the Beatles or Tom Petty, but it was contemporary, so it made me feel like I could do it. Because up until then, I was just listening to my dad's band play all these classic, amazing songs. And there was never an instance of like, oh, I can do that.
Right.
Like I can write my own songs, tell my own stories.
Yeah.
It was more so then, how do I just play the Beatles or Tom Petty or the Beach Boys or something? And so it really clicked for me while I was in high school. And it just kind of progressed from there.
Yeah. At that time, though, when you're like, music's like an outlet because you're playing sports so much in high school, and then you're successful in athletics and football at high school. I mean, what is your career goal at that time, right? Do you know where you're going to go to university and what you're going to do, or you're just like, no, I think music might? Because I guess just listening to you talk, it sounds like music was like your outlet at that time.
Yeah.
Not like legit, this is a career path, I'm diving into this, because you've had the success on the football field as well.
You know what's funny is I remember my senior year, I think it was either the second round of the quarterfinals of the playoffs, and we were really, really good my senior year. We won it my junior year.
Yeah.
Senior year, we were even better, and we lost. You're just one of those things, sometimes it just doesn't happen, right? And I remember on the bus ride home from that loss, it was almost, I don't even remember if we talked about it, but Wes was immediately, he had already gone into his next steps with playing at the next level. I was immediately, I think there was for a minute there kind of like, well, I may have like a responsibility or something to try to play at the next level, and I may think about that, but I can remember that bus ride home, and this is more of an Oklahoma thing too. So Brian, my partner here at the Jones Assembly's dad, was my offensive coordinator in football, and I remember him telling me, he leaned over the seat and he said, what do you want to do? And kind of basically like, do you want to go play at the next level? And this is like an hour after we lost, we were all crushed, in tears. And I remember like trying to answer that question to him, somebody that was not only like my coach, but a close family friend, asking me essentially, what do you want to do with the rest of your life, kind of, right? What's the next step in the rest of your life? And at that time, I think maybe I just turned 18, senior year of high school. But in my head, I knew that music was the next thing.
Yeah.
Even though football, I may have played, maybe could find a spot. I kind of think I knew right then and there on that bus ride home that music was it.
Yeah.
So even the latter half of my senior year of high school into the summer of my freshman year in college, I mean, it was music. That's when I started recording my own songs, and the internet was just happening, just beginning to be the thing that people were using to listen to music, send music, trade music, and I was lucky enough to fall right into it.
So from that moment then, I guess, leading up to that moment, you hadn't really given music the kind of attention that it deserved to be a career, but from that moment you have that conversation, you're like, and from then on it's like I'm definitely not going to be a football player. Music is everything now. Yeah. And I guess it probably came a shock to some people that you were like giving so much attention to music and not football.
Yeah. It was just, when you're in high school, your time is school and sports, or school and, your girlfriend, and for me, it was sports. And it was like at that moment, I could just feel like the world opening up and giving me this opportunity to go chase a dream, as cheesy as that sounds, and that's what it was. I just knew. And what was funny is I took a trip down to Trinity University in San Antonio, which is like a little Division III school. Yeah. And the ironic thing is my ex-girlfriend at the time, went to school there. Yeah. And with no connection at all, the school asked me to come down and take a visit to play football there. And it was a Division III, nice school. And probably on paper would have been just the perfect fit for me to go down there, play football, small school, not too serious, but definitely like would have been a really great experience, great education. I took the trip down there, had the most miserable experience because I essentially kind of ran into my ex-girlfriend.
And she doesn't know you're coming. She's like, what are you doing here? Well,
it was kind of, I'm even trying to remember how that all went down. Point being, I went down there, and I think because of her, I didn't do it. Right. Again, I felt this responsibility. I was like, well, this team wants me to play, and I should do it, right? Like, I should play football. And I remember the coach called me and said, okay, we've got everything. We don't do scholarships, but we've got everything kind of lined up for you to come here and play. And I said, hey, respectfully, I remember this conversation like it was yesterday. I remember I was in my bedroom. Yeah. And I said, I think I'm going to go play music. And he just goes, music? He just goes, well, we have a music program here. You can play music here. And I said, no, I'm actually going to go write songs and be a musician. And it was like the longest pregnant pause on the phone with this football coach trying to tell this kid from Oklahoma who wants to go play music. And he just goes, okay. Well, call me if you change your mind, kind of like good luck, and but I just kind of knew. I mean, I knew that it was I knew that if I just had the opportunity to write songs and have people listen to them, I felt like I could go do some things. Yeah. And at that time, this is 2000, the music business was like, it was kind of wide open. Right. It was an exciting time, like I said, with the internet, and you were kind of one button click away from people hearing your songs, and and I knew I could do it. Yeah.
So from that moment, then you kind of go into it. Like I said, you're recording. Then the internet's kicking off, right? So you got SoundCloud, Spotify, and all. No,
you had none of those things.
None of those things.
No.
See, I mean, I'm 31. I don't remember that.
No. What was you got to remember, this is pre-Facebook, pre-MySpace. This is pre-iTunes. This is LimeWire.
Okay. I remember LimeWire.
You're in Napster, LimeWire.
Okay. So your goal at that time is to record and upload as much as possible.
So I remember the moment when I had paid a guy, I think $100. I wrote some songs with a buddy of mine that went to another high school who played guitar with. We paid a guy $50 to record our acoustic songs. And I had a few more, and we had 6 or 7 songs. Yeah. And I remember my brother, Garrett, my younger brother, kind of knew how to take these songs and somehow get them into the computer and upload them. No one at that time even knew what uploading was. I mean, this is still when you heard like the noise when you were logging on to AOL, right? Because he somehow figured out how to upload these songs, and we uploaded them. And by the time I got to Dallas my freshman year, these songs had kind of taken on a life of their own and circulated around the country, world, whatever. Yeah. And when I had uploaded them, sorry, this is long-winded. I apologize. No, I'm kind of meandering.
It's a podcast. We got time.
Yeah, you can edit this out. You don't, when you upload them, you don't know where they're going, who's listening to them. But it wasn't until the time when I got to my dorm room in college when I kind of made a little website. Yeah. Just because I was playing gigs or wanted to play some gigs. And I think there was then like, I can email this guy who has these songs that I heard on Napster or LimeWire. And I started getting emails.
So at this time, so you mentioned going to Dallas. You decided where you want to go to university then for music specifically. Yeah. And I assume SMU.
So I was going to go to Arizona State. Okay. Just to go somewhere where no one else in my class was going to go. I wanted to do something on my own. Yeah. And a few months before I kind of said these are the plans, a group of other friends of mine said we're going to go to Arizona State too, and I pulled out.
Really?
So then Dallas became this spot where I just said, it's far enough away from home, cool music scene, knew that they had some cool clubs down there that I could go play. And it was just sort of like right place, right time.
Yeah.
And made the trip down there.
Do those guys know who went to Arizona State know why you pulled out?
I don't think I ever told. It wasn't personal.
Well,
it was more just like,
they might be listening to this now and be like, so that's why you didn't join
no,
us.
I think it was more just like, I just wanted a fresh start, and I didn't want to just roll into, Tempe, Arizona with a group of my high school friends, because I think I knew even then and there that like I might get kind of caught up in the same routine.
Yeah. So you go to Dallas, you get your website, you start getting emails of people who are listening to your music.
Yeah.
What's that first email that you get? Hey, come play at my place.
Yeah, it was really more just like, hey, I go to so and so school in Rhode Island or upstate Massachusetts, and I heard your songs, and do you ever play shows out here? It was it wasn't like I want to book
travel?
you. It was just like, when are you going to come? It was like, when are you going to come here?
Yeah.
And so it happened so fast. Mm-hmm. And even Brian Bogert, my partner here at the Jones, my lifelong best friend, he even sent an email out because he had already graduated at that time. Yeah. So he was living in Dallas at the time with some other friends of ours, and we all lived in the same apartment complex. And I guess that would have been my sophomore year. Sorry, I'm bouncing around. But he was sending emails and physical letters out to me to different fraternity brothers and different fraternities across the country to help me get gigs. So it was a collection of people that were helping me spread the word.
Right.
So I gigged around Dallas for, a year and a half.
Yeah. Where was that first gig?
Where?
Yeah.
The first gig was actually the summer before. Like, it was in the summertime before I actually started school officially. Yeah. It was probably early August at the Gypsy Tea Room, which is a famous club on Main Street in Dallas.
Yeah. How are you feeling when you walk up on stage and you're just like, hi, Graham Colton, standing there with your guitar looking out at like a few people just like, this is it.
Because that was the first real show, like an actual, not a gig, but a show, a concert.
Yeah.
And I had this shitty acoustic guitar. I remember putting tape on my guitar where only I could see it that had the lyrics to my own songs because I was so nervous.
On the top
of the guitar, right on the top. When you hold it, there's a piece of tape right there. And I remember putting a little cheat sheet of songs, and I didn't have enough material. I only had like 5-6 songs that I could play live. But once I did it and got through it, I learned a lot. And I was opening for another artist that ended up producing, a guy named Kerry Pierce, who ended up producing my first kind of official album. And that started just like, I was hooked.
So from that moment, you're like, this is it.
This is it.
Yeah. I don't want to be doing anything else.
Nothing else.
Everything
School didn't matter.
Yeah.
Nothing else mattered, but just, and it was a really cool time for, like, if you were a dude with a guitar with songs that were sort of, love rock songs, right? Like, there was a place for you because all the songs that were kind of being traded around the internet were sort of this, like, John Mayer was really happening at that point. Dave Matthews was obviously still kind of one of the biggest acts around. So there was this like, all the music that was being traded was kind of this college rock, pop, acoustic thing.
Good timing.
And I was able to, even though I didn't totally sound like John Mayer or sound anything like Dave Matthews, we all kind of found ourselves. And I say we all because at that time there were a bunch of guys and bands just like me in different cities kind of doing the same thing. So we all have kind of a similar story. That was it. So I just fell into that right time. And what's interesting is that was right around the time 9/11 happened.
Okay.
So my sophomore year, I remember going to class. I was a part-time student at that time, so I'd already like diminished my schedule, to go play gigs in Austin and San Antonio and Waco, and 9/11 happened, and a group of us got together and we wrote a song for an album called Bands for America. And it was just this little record that, you know, some people heard, and I got, you know, some attention from that little album that was from this just insane time.
Right.
And that was actually kind of a big moment.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Going from playing just regional stuff to then you're on that record, and then it's like...
Yeah, you know, then you're surrounded by, I mean, Jack Johnson was on that EP, and, you know, some different people that were, you know, real artists,
right.
You know, and there I was, you know,
part-time
on
college
this,
kid.
you know,
Yeah.
even in this terrible time that was just a crazy, insane experience. Even that kind of seemed to propel me into a different lane.
So from that moment, that, like I said, propels you into a different lane, and then you're on the radar of
that's
big
a good way to
acts,
say it.
surprise. So then you're getting pulled in other directions. Hey, come here, come there.
Yeah.
And then I guess it goes, like you said, to another level, right? You're traveling wherever off that.
Yeah.
Continuing to write your own stuff too, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So what I had done is, I remember whenever I started to feel like, okay, I think some things are actually happening. You know, I had formed the band, which at the time I was, you know, just going by Graham Colton, but I had these band members that were these great musicians in Dallas, different age groups, different backgrounds. So we just kind of called ourselves the Graham Colton Band. And we had just started to kind of, like I said, play more full band kind of gigs. So no longer was I doing this acoustic thing. You know, I had this great band, and I remember filling out manila envelopes to like all these different addresses of managers. You know, I was like, who manages these bands that are these big bands across the country, and how do I like reach them? So I mailed out a bunch of envelopes, you know, with here's my CD, here's who I am, here's my biography, this is what I'm looking to do. And I got one response, and it was this manager from Virginia Beach who was connected with the Dave Matthews Band camp. He was also a promoter. So he was like, well, let me book you a kind of a tour, because he was like, you know, I book concerts across the country, especially in the South and the East. So he booked us this tour, and we drove from Dallas to Virginia. We played Washington, D.C. We played some universities. And you talk about being it and hooked. I mean, you get on the road for the first time with your friends. You have a trailer. You're in a van. You play a show.
About,
I mean, this is
right?
it. Like that was it. And it was just like, I mean, this sounds really cheesy, but it was just like, you just feel alive. You know, you're going to these new cities, and you're playing your own music, that these songs that you wrote for people to listen to them. And you're getting in the van, and you're going to the next city. I mean, that's as somebody who's 19 years old. That's it.
So you'd kicked college at this point then?
I was kind of still, I think at that point, maybe I was still trying to make it work. But I distinctly remember before we got that first tour with opening for Counting Crows, which was in 2002. I had emailed my professors and said, I'm going to have to send in my finals. I'm going to have to find a way to take my final exams. And all of that is just a blur. But when we went on that first tour with Counting Crows, again, just another level of like, oh my God. I remember we started on that tour in Amherst, Massachusetts. I think it was or maybe it was Northampton, or wherever the University of Massachusetts is. And, you know, Counting Crows was, for me, I mean, one of my favorite bands ever. Like, that was the band that I listened to when I first got my driver's license. Like, that's the CD I put in. So
some people listening don't remember having to put CDs in their cars.
But everybody can relate to like the band they love when they first get in their car and they put that song on, and you are free. You know, that was it. And so to get asked to go on tour with that band, and I remember showing up in Massachusetts. We drove our van and our trailer, and we pull up, and I remember we walked into the arena, because we were playing this big arena, and the band is sound checking, and you just are like, how did we get here? You know, like, it's like that Almost Famous kind of like, how it was bigger than life. You know, I mean, you're like, we're playing an arena tonight in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
Like, how does that happen?
Do you ever think about that Trinity College football coach? That moment you're like, you can.
No, because I mean, you know,
stick your football.
But I think like the similarities to even like, I'm gonna get real ethereal with you real quick. The similarities of like when we won the state title my junior year and having this magical 15-0 season where you go from obscurity to like best team in the state, having this amazing cinematic experience. Same, it was identical in that, you know, the music kind of journey is like, you don't know it's happening, you feel it, but you don't, you're just in it, and you're just like, oh well, this is just cool,
right?
And that's what makes it so great. That's what makes it so great. And that's the thing that I find myself wanting to try to, like, the Jones was the same way. You're just in it. You're not, it's not mathematical. You're not, you just, does that make sense?
No, it does, because, and I haven't experienced it to that level, but I think just from like, my golf is my thing, right? So even for me, like talking about being in it, like you're just doing reps, right? You're in it, you're practicing, you're doing your thing, your head is down the whole time because you're just working at it until, you know, and there's little things along the way, there's little steps, right? But until you hit that one significant moment, right? Like with football, you're like, we just won state championship. Or with that, you know, we're playing an arena, like all these little things add up. I mean, they're great moments, but then when you get to those big significant ones, and then you look back and think, wow, the last, you know, year or whatever, or 10 years has flown because you just had your head down working, and then you get to that moment, like, we were at that level now, and
you connect the dots, and it makes sense of how you got there,
right?
But like when you're in it, it's you're either having so much fun, or you're just like I kind of said, you're just riding this wave, and you're focused on you're just focused on like the task ahead, or not the task, because that sounds, I mean,
but you're in the process, right?
You're just working and it was just it was magical. It was just like, oh my God, like this is what it's all about. And when you lose that, when it starts to become mathematical, and it starts to become a job, and it starts to become economical, is when things change,
right? Because then you're missing things. You might be missing family. You're away for birthdays, all the rest of it. Like that process. Back to what you mentioned, you kind of don't think about it because you don't have time to think about it.
And it's always that, for me, it's always been that balance of like knowing enough to get better and improve, but also unlearning. How do you get back to that place where you're just ignorant? You don't even know. You're just doing what you know how to do, and you're not overthinking it, and you're just going with your gut. And does that,
No, I get it. I get it.
So that was what it felt like. And you know, thereafter that first arena show, we went from tour to tour to tour to tour. And at that time, you know, 02 to 05, it was almost like the music business was so small that everybody was, I mean, it's just kind of like, we just thought that's the way it was. We just, you're going to go from Counting Crows to Dave Matthews to John Mayer to Maroon 5 to Jason Mraz to, you know, all these different moments, and you're going to go make a record with Brendan O'Brien, who had just done Bruce Springsteen, and you just think, you know, Better Than Ezra was another one of my just most favorite bands ever. And now you're writing songs with them, and you know, it just, you're just in it, and it's just, you know, at that time, like, I'm 20.
Right.
20.
You're still
I'm
a baby, right?
Yeah, I'm a baby. And all the things in between, you know, you're on the road, and it's late nights, and you're partying, and you're trying to maintain relationships with your bandmates, and it's real. I mean, it's a cliche of why bands break up and how they stay together. And I just say I learned more about life in those moments than I could in any classroom. And
you're fortunate to go through that experience at such a young age because you grew up faster. Right? Being away from home, traveling, trying to manage your mates and partying and whatever it is. Like, you know, it's an experience that you wouldn't trade, but like at the same time, there's so many significant learning things.
That was my college. I mean, that was college.
Realized, but
that was college for me.
That
was. everything that I could have, because it's new cities, it's new people that you've never met. You roll into some city and you meet all kinds of different people. Most of the time late at night. But you just learn. I mean, you just like everything that could have happened to us out on the road in random cities happened to us. And you learn.
Well, what was your, I guess, favorite city, and what was the worst city?
Favorite city, I think, was always Chicago. There was something about playing that big city that just seemed like it was a melting pot of all these Midwestern kids. So everything was kind of bigger, a little bit bigger, and it felt cool to play a big city. The college towns were great, but Chicago was really fun. I would say that the worst cities to play was, there were some days when we would go up and play Albany and Rochester, New York in like January, February, and you'd be loading in at 4:30 in the afternoon, and it's dark and cold, and you're not playing until 11 that night. And that's when you get homesick, and you're just like, oh my God, there's 10 people here to play us, to watch us. What are we doing?
Back to what you mentioned, it becomes a job at that point.
Then we'd go back and we'd open for somebody the next week at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C., and it'd be 1,500 people, and you're just like, oh, this is why we do it. So it's just, it was a ride for sure.
So when does it, like, you're doing this, and like you said, you have all these experiences, and, just riding that wave, you mentioned some great bands you're opening for, right? Maroon 5, Dave Matthews, all that. Like, when does it get to a point where, you're not the opening act anymore? You're the guys that are like, hang on, you're just bumping yourself up the roster, and then you are the act. I mean, we had these pockets in cities where we were a headliner. And looking back, I think that if we made one mistake, I would say, from a business standpoint, it was, we probably shouldn't have taken as many of those opening slots, as cool as they were. The kind of the cardinal rule of a lot of the bands that have come up with me that are now, massive bands like Need to Breathe, they really committed to headlining, whether there was 10 people in the audience or whether there was, 1,000. We were lucky enough to be invited to go on tour with all these great artists, and we couldn't pass it up. But I do think there was an element to, our agent at the time, who was Scott Clayton, who's, Kings of Leon, Zach Brown. He would say, you gotta just headline. You have to see what you're worth in these markets. And so to answer your question, I mean, we did great in Birmingham, great in Chicago. We did really well in Washington, D.C. But just when we were, about to do a tour that was ours, to really see where we stood, and really get out there and stand on our own 2 feet, we would get invited to open up for someone else, and we just couldn't resist. And I think that's when the Kelly Clarkson tour, was, off and on. That was over a year of just that one tour. And how do you say no to that? Right. It's huge.
Huge.
Yeah.
So,
and you're still young at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was 05. So early 20s.
Yeah. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma story through its people since 1927. For more information on the Hall of Fame, go to www.oklahomahof.com and follow them on Instagram for daily updates at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.